Welcome to Focus on Albany. I'm Cynthia Pooler, and my guest today is my dear friend Leon VanDyke. And Leon is going to talk about the exhibit at the Albany Public Library about the brothers. So, Leon, first of all, how you feeling?
I'm feeling good. I'm getting better and stronger.
Good, good, good.
I
So,
think.
go ahead.
No. I just,
So, okay. So, what library was it in?
it was at the Arbor Hill, West Hill uh, uh, branch on
Okay,
Henry Johnson Boulevard.
okay. So, how long, when did the exhibit start and how long will it be going?
I think it's got a life of about a couple more weeks.
Okay,
It's going to, I think it's honoring local history month. So
okay.
it'll be the month of May.
Oh, okay.
So
Wow.
yeah, I'm excited by it.
Uh-huh.
Brought
So,
back a lot of memories. Go
oh, I
ahead.
bet it did. So when you just got back from the exhibit today, right?
Yeah, about an hour ago.
Okay, so what did you see and what kind of memories did it bring back for you?
Well, I stood the exhibit itself of the many different people, which most all of the people in the picture I knew, the members of the brothers and people who the brothers had helped, and people who had helped the brothers. Uh, some attorneys and civil rights activists that were in the pictures, uh, and so it brought back a lot of memories of the picket lines and why
Mhm.
um, the Albany Liberator, Peter Pollock,
Mhm.
and his lovely wife.
So how many people were in the brothers?
Well, you know, I would say actively there was, I would say close to 20 or 30 that were
Uh-huh.
active, that were there all the time,
Uh-huh.
from the beginning and the end. But one time we had membership cards, and I would say we issued maybe a couple hundred. Uh, and and why I say that was each brother would have a number of cards and trying to get people to join,
Mhm.
and uh, and they would distribute those cards liberally, and I mean
Mhm.
liberally.
Mhm.
So 200, uh, but one of the things, it wasn't as much as I would say from my memory, as how many uh, people were in the brothers or said they were members of the brothers. But the people, when we give rallies and demonstrations and pickets, our rallies would easily have 400 people in.
Mhm.
And this would, and a lot of our rallies was on Second and Swan Street, which we tend to prefer. But some of the rallies were at City Hall, of course, and then we were at the Capitol, depending on what rally that we were in. And brothers rapidly became uh, not just a local organization, but a statewide and national organization. And we can
Mhm.
talk about that later, why I say that. Uh, but yeah, I would say uh, hardcore members that were there from the beginning to the end. We're talking about 15, 20 brothers.
Mhm.
And in terms of people who were in and out, I would say around 40 or 50. Yeah.
So before the brothers were formed, did you know any of the men that you created the group with? Did you know them before the start of the brothers?
That's a good question. Uh, 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 some I did, some I didn't. And I've talked about this. My my take on how the brothers started, and that this is my perception. Different brothers have different perceptions. People have different perceptions of who were the brothers and how did they start. But my perception, and I would say, uh, it started with the picketing of the labor union, and part of that was because uh, we would go to the labor union to get jobs on the then South Mall project, they call it now. We call it the Empire State Plaza,
Hmm.
and we would go there and not be selected. And I start complaining about it to the guys in the hall, and so it was because they would tease me and say, "Man, when are you going to pick it?" So after being harassed, I decided I would pick it. So I said, I'm going to go pick it and pick at the Union Hall. And a fellow by the name of Robert Gene Dobbins, who was one of the founders of the Brothers, a very dear friend, um, he said, "Well, Leon, if you pick it, I'll pick it with you."
Hmm.
So I went out and picked it and joined me. Robert Gene joined me. And then uh, as we were picketing, then it was covered by the local newspaper, by the Knickerbocker News, by a woman by
Hmm.
the name of Judith Bender. And Judith Bender, I think she was part of the Bender family, Bender Lab, I think they call it.
Okay.
And so uh, after that, a few other people that were friends. We were all friends. We all lived around First and Larch Street. The core of the brothers were those guys: Robert Gene Dobbs, the Dobbs family, the Newton family, uh, Pete Jones, who I knew from my days as Shining Shoes on North Barrel Street, uh, and they joined us. And then there was a guy that none of us knew who came up to me, and I'd say the kind of guys these were, who when we were picketing, uh, this guy came up to me, about 6'4", 250 pounds, big dude. I said, "Why are you guys picketing?" And at that time, we always thought the way the union leaders would get at us through encouraging other blacks to attack us. So Sam, that's what you call it, that was the fellow I'm talking about. His name was Sam McDowell, who was one of uh, the stalwarts of the brothers. And he said, "Why are you guys picketing?" So we told him, "Because we can't get." He said, "You're right. Give me a sign." Well, show you who Sam was. Sam was working on the construction site. So Sam would come and join us picketing, and then when it was time for him to go to work, he would go and start working on construction. And the site they were building was an extension of a union hall. Now you must understand, a part of putting this in context, these union guys were connected to the machine. They were also Democratic committeemen,
Hmm.
but they were also nobody to fool with. They were also, some of them working there later on. They were connected to the Mafia family in Buffalo and the Banana family in New York City.
Mm.
So these guys were and the union leaders, they would come out and they see black guys picketing. And in their mind, they knew that they were tough guys not to be fooled with, and everybody knew it. But why didn't these fools know it? They were picketing.
Hmm.
But well, anyway, uh, so in about a week, I must have been 15, 20 other Black guys who joined us. And then the next thing we knew, after this article came out, students joined us. Uh, Ministers joined us. And by the time it was all over, we had Howard Hubbard, who you know, the bishop of Auburn. He was a young minister. He joined the picket line. And so that was the start, that was the nucleus. The nucleus of the brothers was those people that was on the picket line. We then met people at Trinity, George Bunch, who was another brother that's not as known, but he was the director of the Community Action Program. And George was also a junior professor at St. Rhodes. And I met his name. He was outspoken. He was the youth group of the NAACP and all that. So that was some of us. And answer your question, the nucleus of the brothers came from around First and Large Street. It was the groups that the guys I mentioned. We didn't know each other. Earl Thorpe, who was his mother and my mother were very good friends. Earl was connected to the neighborhood groups, which had recently been formed maybe a year before that because of the war on poverty. So that was, so we were, some of us were friends, some of us had known each other through other ways or knew of each other. I was fairly well known in Albany because I was a waiter at a very popular local bar called Dorsey's. Those who've been around a long time know of Dorsey's, and it's a place where in fact, it's a place where I met a very dear friend of mine, Arthur Eve, who wound up being the deputy speaker of the assembly, and I knew Charlie Rangel, and all of them hung out at Dorsey's, and I was their waiter. So people knew of me, but they knew of me as well.
So the stuff that you're telling me right now, was it in the exhibit? Tell everybody watching and listening what exactly was in the exhibit, and what do you think they can learn from it?
That's another good question. You should have a lot of good questions at me.
Thank you.
One, the exhibit is made up of the various different issues that's highlighted that the brothers took on, such as the collecting of trash, which seems pretty benign now. But in Albany at that time, the city of Albany did not pick up trash. And that's a basic service, but they didn't pick up, and you had to pay for trash. So the poorer you are, the less likely you were, and it compounded a lot of problems. So we took that on. In fact, we took that on as a sideline rather than the main issue. We had no idea it would become as popular as it was, but we were involved in housing. We had a prenatal care center where doctors volunteered to come down and examine women who thought they were pregnant or were pregnant, and provided them with all kinds of. This is pre-Whitney M. Young Health Center. This is we're talking about 1967. And we had that every Thursday. Women who wanted to be examined could come down to the brother's office, and they cordoned it off. And these were doctors these were doctors from the various different hospitals who volunteered, and it was led by, and you'll know this name, that was led by a guy by the name of Dan DeSole, who was the husband of Gloria Dissol, who, as you know, Gloria is very prominent in the women's movement and gay movement, what have you. But at that time, Gloria was one of the very strong supporters of the brother. So anyway, Pete Jones, who was one of the founding members, he would have a late lunch program for kids to come down to the brothers, and we would feed them and what have you. We organized rent strikes. We concentrated on employment and getting blacks employed, and we put pressure on then the new Colony Mall. We organized this boycott of mall stop. I think it was like picked a Saturday or Sunday where say blacks not shop on that day, and that was enough to frighten these guys. Even if we weren't, it frightened them. They didn't know whether we were going to be successful or not, but we didn't know it either. but so they brought, and I forgot all about some of the things. I mean, there's the rent strikes. Once we organized 2-3 months in conjunction with the Albany legal aid, which was run by a guy by the name of Larry Klepper, who worked very closely with us. Should at the risk of him being defunded, because remember that was something that the machine. They were Democrats, and they were loyal Democrats to the machine, and they had their national contacts, and they could have very well easily closed somebody like Larry down. But Larry always had his organization, Legal Aid Society. So we would put money in escrow, and one of the things about that with the landlords realized once you start getting people to stop paying their rent, it's hard to get them to start back up again. And we'd tell people you have to put the money in escrow, but some people wouldn't. And there was no way for us to enforce it. And so landlords did not, that was a club that we had over their head. So that brought back, I forgot about that, and there's a whole bunch of stories. The chairman of that committee was my buddy Earl Thorpe, who rightfully so has been put forth as one of the spokesmen. So the $5 vote, which was another thing, and us running people for office or encouraging people to run for office. Just trying to think here. The housing. I can't refresh my memory here. We were very much involved also in the prison reform movement, police brutality, which goes back, once again, there's this great picture, I haven't seen it in this exhibit, but we're sitting in at the Albany Police Department. And this is 1968, 69. I mean, can you imagine people sitting in at a police station here in this day and age? And it wasn't so much that the police were less violent then than they were now. The police were just as violent, if not more so. We must remember, not necessarily the same alone, but when you talked about the riots, the race riots, the real race riots that they had in the 20th century, and the Klan, they were led by off-duty policemen and policemen, you know. So so it brought back a lot of memories, people like Father Hubbard, who his first picket line was with the brothers,
Mhm.
and him, Nellis Tremley, Father Young, they were all young priests, and they convinced. I was on a panel discussion. This is as I said, maybe in 1966 at I think it was uh, at Russell Sage College, and I was on a panel discussion with Bishop McGinn, who was one of the school was named after him,
Mhm.
but he was a bishop at that time. And I was on a panel discussion, and I was wondering, I said to myself, what the hell does a bishop do? I, I, I had, I had never, but there were so many things that the brothers did, and they formed, and right now my memory is not all that great. But one of the other things that the brothers did, they were recognized by the state and national organizations uh, as part of that larger movement. So I was a delegate at the 1967 first Black Power conference that they ever held in the nation. And then I was an honorary delegate, and some of the other brothers were honorary delegates at the first Black political convention. And I say that because starting in 65, starting in the 1965 voting rights act, there became a transition that moved the group from a civil rights movement to a political rights movement. And without that movement, and with that movement, you saw the rise of Blacks being elected as mayors, governors, Governor Wilder of Virginia. It was just not possible for him to become Black governor without large numbers of Blacks registering to vote. It's not possible. Jesse Jackson, look back at it now, that when Jesse ran for president, he won 13 states in that 13 primaries.
Mhm.
That was unheard of.
Mhm.
But what that did is that showed you the power that Blacks had amassed. Obama could not have been elected. And right now, the power that Blacks and brown people possess is that it is not possible for anybody, white, Black, red, or green, to be nominated in the Democratic Party without the support of those Black intellectuals.
So
Just
we have a few minutes left. Was there anything about the exhibit that surprised you?
yeah, one thing that surprised me, I'm looking at the various different photos of myself, and I'm wondering if I ever was that young. You know? But,
Uh-huh.
the other, it brought back memories I hadn't thought about various different members of the brothers
Uh-huh.
who that was there that I hadn't thought about in a long time,
Mhm.
who are unsung heroes, but were heroes nonetheless.
Right.
And I mean, it's easy for me to remember Robert Jean Dobbs,
Mhm.
Stan McDowell,
Mhm.
uh, William Gibson. Those guys pop out, but 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 Henry Washington, another fellow named Lightning, and he was. These were guys who joined the brothers in the early stages at risk they put themselves in harm's way.
Mhm.
Uh, Back in those days, the machine were nothing to fool with.
Wow.
You know, they
And
were
on that note, Leon, we're out of time
again.
again. So we'll resume this conversation. You've been listening to Leon Van Dyke. I'm Cynthia Pooler. This is Focus on Albany. And if you like this show, um, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Leon, it's always great talking with you. And thank you, everybody, for listening. Have a great
Same
day.
here, Cynthia.
Bye.
Thank you.